Mr. Slaughter, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance led by Ms. Buchanan.
Would you join me in prayer? Our most gracious Heavenly Father, we come before you this day so thankful for the many blessings that you bestow upon us each and every day. Lord, we ask that you be with us as we go through this trying time and help us to get over this pandemic that we're in the middle of. Lord, now as we partake of this meeting, we ask that you be with us, make all the decisions that we make will be pleasing to you. And Lord, it is in your name that we ask all these things. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'll call the 3 p.m. session of the July 28, 2020 meeting of the Henry County Board of Supervisors to order. I'd like to welcome all guests. Remind you, if you want to be placed specifically on the agenda to address the board, you'll need to contact the county administrator's office at least 7 days in advance of any meeting. However, on our agenda later in the meeting tonight, we do have agenda item that references matters presented by the public that will allow anyone to address the board at that time. Again, welcome everyone. Our first item of business consideration today is agenda item number 5, the items of consent. What's the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chairman, I move that the items of consent be approved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor? It is 6-0, Mr. Hall. Agenda item number 6, the monthly report on delinquent tax collection efforts. We have with us County Treasurer Scott Grindstaff. Welcome.
Good afternoon. This is the report as of June 30th, 2020. Personal property collection during the month of June, as of June 30th, we have collected 92.61% of our personal property, 2019 personal property taxes. The amount collected during the month was $107,689. As of June 30th, 2020, we have collected 94.18% of our 2019 real estate taxes. The amount collected during the month was $123,505. Since the 1st of January, TACS has collected $444,255. And through our debt set-off program, we have collected $132,964. So far in the month of July, we've had 7 DMV stops collected. And I would like to inform y'all, remind y'all that Thursday, July 30th, we'll be holding a judicial sale here in the boardroom starting at 1 p.m.
Okay, any questions of Mr. Grindstaff? Thank you.
Thank you.
Agenda item number 7, we have a monthly update from the Martinsville-Henry County Economic Development Corporation. We have with us Mark Key. Mark, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. It's good to be back with you in open session. We've been meeting in closed session for the last few months, but just a word before I talk about some of the things that are going on. For those that may not know, the EDC has continued to work throughout the pandemic. We never closed our offices. We've been very busy working. As you know, you may know, the NCI building is closed and will remain closed for the foreseeable future with the school system, or the school year rather. But we're there working. CCAT has been open throughout. It's open completely. The press class people have been there almost on a daily basis. They're going at full steam ahead. So we're providing service to our customers in a very responsible way, trying to do what's right, but it has worked out well for us. Our staff has been exceptionally understanding and hard-working through this, and so we're really happy about that. You know, there's been, like with us, with a lot of other folks, there have been Zoom meetings and Microsoft meetings, but with the exception of our client travel and our travel, most things have been pretty much normal, as you could expect in a time like this. So I just would like to just commend our staff for the fine job that they've been doing for the last 4 or 5 months. In our business development division, you can see Valerie Harper has been busy. She has assisted 12 companies in the last month with general inquiries, and also you'll see the site visits where our people are still going out and meeting with clients face-to-face, well, at least face-to-face with mask and 6 feet apart, but they're still going out and talking to people at their locations to try to help them and find ways of working with them better. You can see we have a discretionary grant program between now and the end of October 31st, where folks that need a small grant from $200 to $500 to work on marketing or things like that can access that. The first $300 award was given to Gourmet and Keto Express just last week, so that is up and running. Valerie's been very involved with the Henry County's CARES Fund and is on that committee working with companies also in the city of Martinsville and with the Harvest Pay It Forward grant that's still active, trying to get that information in front of a lot of folks. Valerie's putting together now a program they'll be hosting a contest you'll learn more about online, but the winners, it's for deep cleaning, disinfecting, fogging services at local businesses that we'll provide, so there'll be more information about that. Been doing a lot with newsletters and things like that. In our marketing and recruiting and research section, or division rather, again, traffic continues to be very strong. You'll see the attached unemployment report for May, and obviously it has spiked up. We had a big spike in March. It's back down now to the county to 10.5% and 11.3 blended with the city and the county, and it could be much worse. Quite honestly, most of our uptick has been due to retail and restaurants and people like that. Manufacturing has continued fairly consistently throughout. We've even had a lot of companies that have worked overtime, that have gotten additional business because of the pandemic, and we're thankful that our manufacturing workforce has stayed pretty steady. We have submitted a Southside Economic Development Grant to the Tobacco Commission to get some help in extending water and sewer to lots 4 and 9 north at the Patriot Center. We hope to hear from that in September. We've had, as you'll see, we're updating both our Yes Martinsville and the Visit Martinsville sites. Both of those will be new updates will be rolled out by the end of October of this year. We have submitted our next 3-year grant to Harvest. This is the year that we go in that cycle. The next grant will begin January 20 of 21, and we feel good about our continued support there. And Spencer's updated all of our properties, both locally on our website and the Virginia scan. We've had in the last couple months, as you know, Advanced Phelps and Drake announcements, which are really good, and prospect traffic in general continues to stay strong. European travel coming this way obviously has stopped, and our travel going to folks has stopped, but otherwise we're having people domestically are flying again and traveling by car, so we're beginning to see that pick up, so we're thankful for that. Our tourism staff had 10 consultations, and you see the companies they've been meeting with. They have worked very well in this last few months, particularly through social media, working with restaurants about when they're opening and picking up and all of those types of things. They worked with NCI and Harvest Foundation on the Feel Good Friday stories. We were just recently given $4,700 from the Virginia Tourism Corporation for a grant to help promote our community in the coming months. We're conducting bi-weekly industry briefing calls to keep folks up to date based on what we're getting from the national and the state tourism folks. And you can see they participated in a lot of virtual conferences and webinars. This Distinctions International virtual call and U.S. Travel Association have been doing, having a lot of those kind of meetings. And you can read down through all those things. Things are going on daily online and through social media to keep information out. One thing we've been doing is tracking the pedestrian traffic on the Dick and Willie, and a new section from Spruce to the complex has been very strong. 7,172 people were on the trail in June, and those numbers were consistent throughout the spring. So it's really been good that people have been able to get out and take advantage of the trails in this time also. We have 2 RFPs out for college lacrosse tournaments now that the complex is beginning to open up a little bit. We gave $500 sponsorship to Piedmont Arts for their Savory September event. And then there's been our tourism staff, visitor center staff, Jeff and Kelly, are participating in weekly social media today chats, telling people about what's going on throughout the community. We have submitted an article, 7 ways to get on the water Philpott Lake for the August showcase. And we did reopen to the public our visitor center on July the 7th. It's been a little bit slow. We've had 13 to 15 people come in, but there you can see there are 31 requests for information, number of phone calls, and as that information gets out, we think more people will come back in. But we thought it was the right time to do that. That's separate from the NCI building. In general, people come just to the desk there to get information, and we feel good about that. We've ordered a bulk supply of the Best of Virginia Living magazine. We had there were 67 local companies that were mentioned, and 25 were first place awardees, so we want to make sure we get those out. And lastly, in talent development, Sarah's working on 2 new video campaigns, one for our internship marketing recruitment for next year. You know, we opened up, we're going to have a really pretty robust internship program this summer. We had 15 people signed up. COVID happened, and we ended up with only 2 at Martinsville Hospital, but that is still run very well. It's been a good test program for us. So we're going to do a video on that, getting ready for next year. We're also our mixed program where we take school teachers into business in the fall. We're going to do that virtually this year, and we're working on that video also. Sarah's been very involved with Jeff Sadler in our uptown revitalization efforts and with other stakeholder meetings, the Martinsville Food Hub calls, and other events for uptown. We had a volunteer day for interns. One of the things that we're requiring our interns to be involved in the community this year. They've worked at GraceNet in helping pack food for folks there. We'll continue to give, or Sarah continues to make regular updates to Martinsville Made. That's a separate workforce development website that we have, and we will, we'll end up next week. Our interns will finish, and then they'll be back. And again, the way we're doing this, we provide housing. These are paid internships. It's our desire that once they graduate, they'll have such a good experience here, they'll want to come back and join our workforce. We need young folks to do that. I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Anyone have any questions of Mark at this time? Thank you, Mark. Agenda item number 8 will take up financial matters. 8A, additional appropriation referencing the carryover of emergency funds for the Department of Social Services. Mr. Hall.
Amy Rice, Director of the Henry Martinsville Department of Social Services, is asking the board to approve the carryover of FY20 emergency funds in the amount of $10,206.33 to the FY21 budget. The funds are usually exhausted before the end of the year, but with utility companies not performing disconnections over the last few months because of the pandemic, some money remains in the account. The funds will be used to assist residents with emergency needs as companies resume disconnecting of services.
With that, and the board's had an opportunity to review the background material on that, what's the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chairman, I recommend the board approve the carryover fund in the amount of $10,206.33.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor? It's a 6-0. I think Jennifer's back there. You were out of my line of vision before, so 6-0, Jennifer. 8B, award of contract referencing landscaping and turf maintenance for the Commonwealth Crossing Business Center. Mr. Hall.
Staff is asking the board to award a contract in the amount of $32,904 to Perlman Landscape Dimensions for landscaping and turf management at Commonwealth Crossing Business Center during FY 2021. Pricing is based on an existing contract with Perlman, and funding for this maintenance is included in the FY 2021 budget.
What's the pleasure of the board in regard of awarding this contract?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we award a contract in the amount of $32,904 to Perlman Landscape Dimensions for landscaping and turf maintenance at CZBC.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Mr. Hall, when we originally put in the landscaping, C.D. Perlman put that in, right?
That's correct.
Do you remember what the cost was initially?
Not off the top of my head, no, sir. No, we can find out.
I'm just curious because for some reason it kind of mirrored the original cost. So this is a maintenance cost, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct.
Any other questions or points of discussion? All in favor? Is 6-0. Jennifer. 8C, an additional appropriation referencing Rescue Squad Assistance Fund Grant for Public Safety. Mr. Hall.
Public Safety Director Matt Tatum is asking the board to approve an additional appropriation of $3,530 received from the Virginia Office of Emergency Medical Services Rescue Squad Assistance Fund Grant Program. The grant will be used to purchase EMS equipment. It requires a 50% match, and that match is included in the FY21 budget. And Mr. Tatum is with us, should you have any questions.
In regard to this additional appropriation, what's the board's pleasure?
Mr. Chairman, I move the board approve the additional appropriation of grant funds in the amount of $3,530.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Yes, sir.
Nothing. I'm sorry, I jumped the gun.
Okay.
Hallelujah. My hand was in the go position. Go. That was coming my hair.
Okay, no, that's fine. With no discussion, all in favor? It's 6-0, Jennifer. Agenda item number 9, a consideration of resolution supporting smart scale application. Mr. Hall.
VDOT requires a resolution regarding the submission of projects for the Smart Scale program, and in consultation with VDOT, staff is asking the board to approve a resolution supporting 3 project submissions to the 2020 VDOT Smart Scale program. The first project proposes to relocate 2,500 feet of the northbound lanes of US 220 Virginia Avenue north of Bassett Forks to improve the vertical and horizontal alignments. The second project proposes to reconstruct the intersection of US 220 South, Greensboro Road, and State Route 87, which is Moorhead Avenue, using a, quote, continuous green T, unquote, design to more efficiently and safely move traffic through this intersection. The third project proposes to widen State Route 930, Dogwood Drive, to accommodate both left and right turn lanes onto US 58, the A.L. Philpott Highway. This will be to relieve congestion during certain periods of the day and to implement access management designs into the adjoining convenience store and gas station. The project applications cannot be submitted without a resolution of support by the Board of Supervisors. Lee Clark in our Planning and Zoning Office is the point person on these smart scale applications. And Lee is here should you have any specific questions. But ultimately, we would ask for the board to act on the proposed resolution that's in your packet.
Okay, the resolution, as Mr. Hall mentioned, is part of the packet. The board's had an opportunity to review. What's the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chairman, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the board approve the resolution.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any questions? Yes, sir.
What is a continuous green T?
Have you been through the new intersection in Ridgeway near the cemetery?
Yes.
Yeah. That's essentially what they would look to. It would be a continuous motion into a lane of traffic, so there's no stoplight, there's no hindrance of the continuity of movement, but it gets you safely on. From VDOT standpoint, it gets you safely on to your ingress and egress.
And the third issue for Dogwood Drive, that's to alleviate Laurel Park.
I believe that's right, Lee?
The Dogwood Drive is to assist with the traffic at Laurel Park Middle School.
Yes, coming out of Dogwood.
Correct. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or discussion? All in favor? It's 6-0, Jennifer. Agenda item number 10, a consideration of change to local ordinance referencing courthouse security fees. George, are you taking this one or Mr. Hall?
I am.
Mr. Lyles got it?
Okay.
Legislation passed at the most recent General Assembly session allows for the Board of Supervisors to increase the fee charged for those convicted of criminal or traffic offenses from $10 to $20. This would be for convictions in the General District Court, the Juvenile and Domestic Relations Court, and Henry County Circuit Court, and the Sheriff's Office requested the fees be increased. I looked at this with Richard Stanfield for last year we raised about $40,000 in in fees were collected in this category. It's been going down over recent years for a number of reasons, but probably one of the most pronounced reasons is the General Assembly passed legislation so that your driver's license is no longer suspended for not paying your court fees. So it makes collection more challenging for the clerks and the Commonwealth Attorney. But we're recommending you increase the fee or advertise a public hearing so we can have a public hearing and consider increasing the fees by $10 in August.
All right. Thank you for that background. With that, what is the board's pleasure in regard to setting of a public hearing to take input on this for the board's August 25th meeting?
Mr. Chairman, I move the board set a public hearing for the board's August 25th meeting to consider changes to the courthouse courtroom security fees.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor? Is 6-0. Jennifer? Agenda item number 11, a discussion of funding for school capital projects. Mr. Hall?
Yeah, we're going to tag team this one. I'll introduce it, and then Mr. Lyle will talk to you about the legal process that we're going to ask you to go through. Legislation passed at the most recent General Assembly session allows for the Board of Supervisors to call for a referendum to consider adopting a 1% retail sales and use tax that would be used to pay for school construction costs. If passed, the tax could last no longer than 20 years. In order to have the matter placed on this November's ballot, the board must pass a resolution requesting the referendum and petition the Henry County Circuit Court to order the matter to be put before the voters. If the matter is approved by voters, the board will then have to advertise and hold a public hearing, adopt an ordinance imposing the new tax, and notify the Virginia Tax Commissioner. A little background on this: Halifax County got this during the 2 sessions ago, permission to put this on the ballot for an additional 1% sales tax coming to the locality. It passed with about a 70% approval in Halifax. So we worked with Delegate Marshall and our advocates in Richmond, Rob Catron and his group, to have this authority extended to Henry County. Several other counties jumped on as we were working it. It did pass the General Assembly. What this will do, if the board chooses to pursue it and have it placed on the ballot in November, and if it passes, we think the additional 1% in sales tax, which may not sound like a lot, but the additional 1% would probably return between $4 and $5 million annually to us, which would need to be used specifically for school construction. There's also a caveat that you can use some of it to pay off school debt, but there's a sunset on it. It only lasts for 20 years. We're hopeful that the community will get behind this because staff, I believe, thinks, and I see Ms. Strayer's with us, I think she would agree, that the school system has some considerable capital needs. So we are hopeful that we can pursue getting this, and the legal process really starts with what Mr. Lyle is kind of going to outline for you right now.
So we're on kind of a tight timeline. To get a matter on the ballot on November 3rd on our next general election, it has to be ordered by the circuit court, and the order has to be entered no later than the August 12th of this year. So I have to petition the court, and to petition the court, it takes a vote of the Board of Supervisors. And I put in there a resolution which should be read if you want to go forward with petitioning the court to do so. And it outlines that, it can be no more than 1 cent, and it can on either both sales and use tax. So those are the maximums. Of course, you could do a lesser amount, but that's what we're recommending is you advertise that. If it's approved by voters in November, you then have to have another public hearing, adopt an amended ordinance that imposes the higher sales tax, and then it cannot go into effect. You notify the tax commissioner. The sales tax is collected, sent to Richmond, and then they send you back what is the localities, and it can't be collected for about 120 days. So even on the fastest time frame, it looks like it would probably be sometime in the spring before the tax would start to be collected.
Dr. Martin, I'm going to apologize in advance for not queuing this up to you earlier. Would you, for the public's edification, read this resolution audibly?
Do you think I know all the words that are here?
I think you do.
I can help you.
Okay, good. Whereas the Henry County Board of Supervisors recognizes the value of world-class education provided by Henry County Public Schools, and whereas the Henry County Board of Supervisors is committed to providing the safest, most secure, and highest quality facilities for Henry County Public Schools to house their programming, Now therefore be it resolved that the Henry County Board of Supervisors pursuant to the authority granted by Virginia Code Sections, hold on, I gotta focus, 8.1-605.1, or is that 58?
58.
Yeah.
Hold on. 58.1-606.1 does hereby petition the Circuit Court for the County of Henry to enter an order requiring a question in the form of a referendum be put before the voters of Henry County on November 3rd, 2020, and that question shall state, question 1, may Henry County levy a general retail sales tax at a rate not to exceed 1% as determined by its governing body to provide revenue solely for capital projects for the construction or renovation of schools in Henry County? Question 2, may Henry County levy a use tax at a rate not to exceed 1% as determined by its governing body to provide revenue solely for capital projects for the construction or renovation of schools in Henry County? This resolution adopted by the Henry County Board of Supervisors on this 20th day of July, 2020.
Okay, and of course, the adoption is contingent upon our vote here shortly.
Correct. Mr. Hall,
Yes, sir.
and maybe you know this, the 70% pass rate for Halifax, that's significant. Did they do any sort of marketing campaign with the voters before that actually went to vote in
They had
November?
a significant campaign in place, basically through the Chamber of Commerce.
Good.
Recently, we were on a conference call with the county administrator in Halifax, the school superintendent, and also the chamber president. I'm thinking, Mr. Strayer, you were on that call as well, right? They laid out a pretty good way to get this out in front of the public.
Good.
And we've met with some partners locally who may help us do that as well. So we're hopeful, you don't want to roll it out too early, but you
No.
got to hit the sweet spot during an election time. And there will be some advocacy and some Q&A available and some public outreach to let folks know what this would bring to the community. 1 cent's a penny on a dollar, yet cumulatively it's a huge impact that we can address some serious capital needs. So we'll work with our partners to make sure that the facts are out and that they're legitimate and be available to answer questions as we go forward.
Now, this is a presidential year, so the voters will be out, I anticipate. Plus this, is there anything else that you know that's going to be on the ballot?
Oh, there are, is General Assembly official? I don't know. How's that for an answer?
No, it's an honest answer.
Yeah, the U.S., the Congress, the congressional seats are up. Federal
Got it.
seats are up.
But this is kind of the only funding sort of thing that may be there.
Right, and there's no election on the county level.
Got it.
It will be on our ballot.
Good.
There are some in the city, I think, but not on ours.
And as Mr. Hall pointed out, this would be applicable to sales tax, which spreads revenue gained amongst everyone versus solely putting tax burden on landowners, which have been in the past, quite a thing that it just falls upon one particular group. With that, and with the background and the board's opportunity to review this, what is the pleasure of the board in regard to placing this on the November ballot?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we place the proposed agenda item on the November ballot via the proposed resolution.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in
Is
favor?
it-
Yes, sir.
Is it going to be 2 questions on there, George?
Yeah, I knew someone was going to ask this. Yes.
It looks like it's 2% instead of 1%, and I think that's going to be confusing.
I know, and I'm going to investigate that, but I think it's got to be 2 questions at this point. The use tax is just another kind of sales tax. If you purchase something that doesn't have a sales tax at transaction, which we're talking a very limited number of items, this would be. For instance, if you're a business and you went to Delaware and bought a piece of business equipment, you wouldn't pay a sales tax. But when you come back to Virginia with your business equipment, you report it and pay your use tax. But it is only going to be, it will move our sales tax rate from 5.3 to 6.3 on things you pay at the transaction and things you self-report later. It used to be, people used to have to self-report, everything's collected almost at transaction now with internet, text, and everything. So it's very few, but it is two questions because it's two different taxes and two different code sections.
I think since people are going to have to answer twice, they're going to be real confused that,
I think so too.
We were forced to use the language that was presented
Yeah.
in the legislation.
That's probably a good marketing campaign to know which one to go for.
Well, in essence, with the way that you've explained it, Mr. Lyle, it's not a double dip.
Correct.
No, it is two, use tax is a tax you pay by the purchaser later if there was nothing collected at the sale transaction. That's essentially what it is. It is what it is.
Correct.
So,
Thank you. We have a motion, second, and we had one question for clarification. Any other discussion or questions? All in favor? It is 6-0. Jennifer? Agenda item number 12, a discussion of cable franchise agreement. Mr. Lyle, Mr. Hall, whoever wants to tee this one up.
So if you remember back in February before our world changed, we had a public hearing and we considered a new franchise agreement as after a period of negotiation between the county and Comcast Xfinity. And the substantive changes that were of discussion back then were, number one, Comcast Xfinity was going to do some expansion of their network, which is outlined in the documents in the Iriswood district and in the horse pasture district. There would be two expansions of their footprint at this point. And the other substantive issue that was discussed a lot at the February meeting was that they were going to be closing their local, they would not be required to keep open, and they plan to close their local equipment exchange and payment location, which is on Commonwealth Boulevard right there at the city-county line. The board deferred action at February, and then, of course, with the advent of the pandemic, we had not gathered to consider the matter until today. The one thing of change is the office closed with the pandemic, and has, as far as I know, hasn't reopened. So that's one change. But when I talked to Mr. Dowery from Comcast, he said they still plan to do the expansion. They can build out fairly quickly if the board adopts the new agreement. That they plan to build out within the next calendar year, and they can move forward fairly quickly. That's the and as it stands now, the prior agreement is expired. It's been expired for many, many years. It just goes year to year under the previous agreement. Our recommendation is to adopt it. Staff recommendation is to adopt it. And it's still probably a better agreement than if we went to court and disputed and had some other agreement that the state says can happen if you never reach an agreement. So that's our recommendation.
Well, there's been quite a bit of background on this, and again, we did have public hearing, as you stated, and I know that there's probably multiple questions among the board as far as services by Comcast that are really not attached to this franchise agreement, which is primarily just for TV, other than expansion that we've talked about. Ms. Buchanan, you had an opportunity to work with this. Do you have any comment before we, as part of this discussion? And I will say, for the record, I'm truly disappointed that the representative from Comcast was not here today.
He
here.
showed up.
Oh, he is here, okay. I'm sorry.
he's under the mask.
It wasn't
He's a masked
identified.
man.
Okay, all right. So, Ms. Buchanan, would you?
Oh, I know one of the questions, and I mentioned this to Mr. Daugherty, was early on, the expansion there in horse pasture, particularly you had said would start in the spring. Of course, with the COVID, I'm sure that has held you up. And in the contract agreement, it's talking about 1 year. Is that just to cover all bases, or do you feel like that Comcast will start soon thereafter after this is approved, if so?
Chairman, members of the board, Ms. Buchanan, yes, we would begin as soon as possible after the agreement was complete. The timeline in there is to cover all bases. there are some possible permitting issues that could come up. It gives that buffer time to ensure that, that the build is complete.
Okay.
Dr. Martin?
Yes, at first I'd like to publicly thank Deborah, George, and Dale for working on this. And it's kind of timely that we're doing it now because I think things have changed. Our environment has changed. Our school system is going to a virtual delivery system, and we have a county in which the internet service is not what it should be because people are living in rural areas. Mr. Daugherty sent me, and we had a conversation yesterday, and he sent me some information of what Comcast is going to do related to Internet Essentials, and this is a program, and please correct me if I'm wrong, that based on a family's economics, that they may be charged $9.95 a month per household, and that would be good till the end of December. So,
If I can make a
oh,
slight correction.
you
Yes, sir.
please
So,
go there.
Internet Essentials is a broadband access program that Comcast has been running actually since 2011. For qualifying families, that price is, that $9.95 is what the price is to participate in the program. That's actually not limited to the end of this year. There is a 2-month free offer for new individuals that is extended through the end of this year, but that is the general, those are the general program parameters that you have in front.
And so this is, and it also says that you can participate in the program if you have never been a Comcast customer before or have a balance due to Comcast.
That's correct. So, well, slight caveat. So there's a 90-day window in advance, and that balance due piece is as part of our coronavirus response. We have waived that, and that is through the end of this year.
So I guess, and not to put you on the spot, but I kind of will at this point. I'm concerned that you're our only internet provider except for those that may have a dish somewhere on their house. Or they're using DSL, they're doing those sorts of things. So you're going to run a new line in Deborah's district and a new line in mine. But that doesn't chip away at the number of students who still do not have internet service to receive instruction in the coming year. After talking with the superintendent, I already know they are planning to have hotspots at schools. So we know that Comcast provides internet service to all of our schools. But the reality for families is mom and dad work all day, they're going to do dinner, it's 8 o'clock, okay, it's time to drive to the parking lot of the school if they need to for their child. So I'm wondering, is there anything else Comcast can do to help us? And this may not be a Comcast-only issue, but as I read the agreement, I'm just curious. So if I picked up the phone, which I have not had an opportunity to do, and I called Georgia, a school district in Georgia out of the blue, because I know you service Georgia, New Hampshire, New York, North Carolina, and I picked a couple school districts, and I compared the agreement that you have with us here with this same sort of agreements that you have there. Would they be similar or would they be different?
No, they would be similar.
Are you doing anything for the school districts in these localities different than what you're doing for us?
Comcast has a national footprint. I can't speak to every variance that there may be across the country, but what we're doing is a standard approach that we're applying to across the country, because it's what we think is a good layered approach to this issue. So we have our coronavirus response that is that is a national response. Now, to some of your other questions, the Comcast cable franchise, which is a video franchise, is a non-exclusive agreement, meaning another provider could come in if that's what they chose to do. There are build-out requirements that are included in that agreement as well. And another piece I'll just mention as part of our coronavirus response is access to our Wi-Fi hotspot network. So this goes into the internet side a little bit. The franchise agreement is rightly noted, is a television, TV video franchise,
Right.
excuse me. But part of Comcast coronavirus response is to open up access to its Wi-Fi hotspots. So we have, since the spring, been providing access both to customers and non-customers to these hotspots for free. We initially were going to have that go through the summer. We just recently extended that access to the end of the year. So there are a great number of them in Henry County. We have a map that folks can go and reference at Xfinity/Wi-Fi, so they can put in an address and they can see where those open access hotspots are. And that is going on right now.
So what has to happen for you to extend those hotspots to areas where, in reality, for our county and those around us, there's no cell service? So how do you get a hotspot into those areas?
Any kind of network expansion, we can have a conversation about it. It depends on the geography that we're talking about. So we would have to have a conversation about any particular point.
So are you saying there's a willingness for you to sit down with our school superintendent and look at the map and determine hotspots and hotspot expansion? Is that what you're saying to me?
I would be happy to talk to the school superintendent. We can talk through a comprehensive approach and see how Comcast solutions might dovetail with what the school is interested in.
So when you say Comcast solution, are you saying that may be something that Comcast is willing to do free of charge to expand?
We would have to look at every situation. I can't stand up and give a blanket promise to make an expansion because every project is different. But I do think that Comcast's approach to the coronavirus has been very good. We've tried to provide a lot of different options for folks, and I'm happy to have conversations with those who are interested in talking about how we can engage in the solution together.
So not to belabor this point, if we approve this today, your name is not on the agreement. There is a Mary McLaughlin and a Misty Allen. Should they be at the table with our school superintendent to determine how to expand these? Because you can't make that decision, they do. Is that correct?
Comcast makes a collaborative decision on projects. I think that I can have a very informed conversation with the superintendent. We can have a good conversation.
But do you have the authority to expand?
Well, we look at everything based on the parameters of a particular project. So we always take a look at each individual project and talk through exactly what's required to affect it.
Okay. And not to put our superintendent on the spot, your office is in Lynchburg?
Well, so my area is Central Virginia and Southside Virginia.
Okay. So you could have a conference about expansion with our school superintendent before our next meeting?
We have conversations all the time, yes.
Would you be willing to come back and tell this board the results of that conversation and how Comcast is going to help her expand?
Well, we'd be happy to talk about the results of the conversation. We would have to see exactly, where that went. I haven't had a conversation with the superintendent, so
She's a
I think it
very
might
nice
be premature
lady.
to.
Very bright in technology.
I believe that, sir.
Okay.
Other questions or comments as part of this discussion?
And this agreement is for 5 years, is that correct?
I believe it's 10, excuse me. I would have to look that up. I'd be happy to get back to you on that.
Well, I thought it was 5, but, okay.
I thought it was 5 too.
I may have misread that. So, Mr. Chairman, just a point, if I can. I think this brings up a broader conversation for us in this county. Certainly, we can vote on this, but after talking to Mr. Hall today, I know that Mr. Wagner is working on a broadband solution, and I'm wondering if we could just allow some time for us to tell us what he's doing with the broadband, because that, in effect, really affects economic development, schools, when we're extending broadband to our larger community. So I think the Comcast is just a piece of the iceberg, and I think expansion is a short-term objective, but I'm hoping that for us, the long-term objective is to bring broadband to every part of our county.
Yes, sir. You prepared to offer some comments on that?
Thank you, Dr. Martin. And of course, I think you mentioned that the Comcast agreement only deals with television. So this is discussion beyond this agenda item. But
Correct.
Just so you know, but we have had the idea of improving broadband to our citizens for the past several years. And some of our staff here, including our IT director, Christian Youngblood, myself, has been in conversations for the past couple of years with some state partners, including the Virginia Tobacco Commission, the Center for Innovative Technology, and most recently, the Department of Housing and Community Development. And there are grant funds available to expand broadband to rural areas, and more so in the last 6 months than it had been in the previous years. I'd like to put the good news before the bad news. We have really good broadband service here with the place of Mid-Atlantic Broadband coming through our community that serves our industrial parks, that serves most of our commercial centers. So we are extremely fortunate in that regard that we can advertise to, our large employers that you're going to have the best broadband service you can have anywhere in the country right here in Martinsville-Henry County.
And that answers the economic development piece.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Where we do have gaps are primarily on the residential end, and those gaps right now are primarily filled through the Comcast Xfinity internet services that are provided. When we started this discussion with some state officials a few years ago, primarily when the Tobacco Commission first got involved with of getting involved with broadband, we were told early on, said, from a rural standpoint, you're in really good shape, so get in line, you're very low to the bottom. So the state has developed a broadband coverage map, and it's in a GIS layer. You can go in, type in your zip code, and it'll show you what coverage you have in your community. It'll show you where you have speeds greater than a certain amount. And comparatively, Henry County is leaps and bounds better off as far as broadband than our neighbors, okay? If you look at the GIS map that the state provides, we have broadband in probably twice as many places as Patrick County, Franklin County, and Pennsylvania County, and I'm sure it's the same going south into Rockingham County. So when they're looking to divvy up grant funds, we're not at the top of the list
Right.
because of that. They're looking at those localities that has 5% broadband, where we're probably in the 75 to 80% realistically. A couple of our challenges in rural Virginia is the nature of living in a rural community. Our population centers has really good coverage with Comcast and CenturyLink. But I can give you an example. Eggleston Falls Road has Comcast service all the way to the end of the road. But we have residents that live on that road that can't get Comcast because they built their house a quarter of a mile off the road or a half a mile off the road.
Right.
And it makes it really difficult for the service providers to justify running that expense for one house. So we run into that a lot. Most of our calls is, well, my neighbor has it, but I can't get it. And I understand that. We need it. We also have one of the best cellular networks anywhere in rural Virginia. Two of our service providers have service at the 4G level. We have a couple that's already offering 5G in our population centers here. So when you overlay those onto our map, it makes us look even better compared to our neighbors. So those are our challenges. So here's what we're working on. we're not giving up on the idea. So just in the last several months, we have been in contact with the Harvest Foundation. We're working closely with them, and DeWitt House, Kristen Youngblood, our IT director, Catherine Vanoy is helping us with this, and myself has had several web conferences with DHCD about some of their grant funds. And our next step is develop, and I don't even like doing studies, but we can't make improvements until we can pinpoint exactly where we're going to get the most bang for our buck. So we hope to commission a study real soon, and we're likely going to apply through the Appalachian Regional Commission or through DHCD to get the grant funds to commission that study. We've also tossed the idea out to the Harvest Foundation about fronting that money so we can move on it faster. So we're at that point now. We haven't made the next step with that. Once we get that study, we'll be able to then work with providers directly, put out a request for proposal where they can, expand into those neighborhoods and get the most bang for the buck and get services to those communities. So that's kind of where we're at, and we're still being told that, our shot is low, but we're going to go after it. We are fortunate we have the Harvest Foundation that we can leverage in a lot of cases. So they like to leverage state money with local money, so that's a plus for us. But we're not standing stagnant. That's where we're at. That doesn't help our school system this fall. However, I understand that. But I will give a little kudos to the school system and county staff as well. I know they've purchased or getting ready to purchase 100 devices that can be issued to children to access the cellular networks that are extremely good in a lot of locations. It's just not perfect. There's still going to be a few communities that it doesn't hit, but that would still allow them to access their exercises, their Zoom meetings, and those types of things through the cellular network. And I think that gives us a really good coverage and hits much of the population, and so much more than our neighbors are having to deal with. And one reason they're hesitant about doing remote learning in other jurisdictions. Did that answer your question?
It did, sir. I guess I'm excited where you are and what you're going to do. It's just frustrating for me as a former school person to know that our kids are going to be back in school in the fall, and it's going to be a virtual environment, and not every kid is going to be treated equally by virtue of where they live.
Yeah.
And that's a hard pill for me to swallow, because it's all about equal opportunities for all of our kids, and it's not going to be equal. We're going to do the best we can, know that. But I just want to be sure we're doing everything we possibly can for them.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
I'm going to add a couple things to what Dale said. He mentioned a young lady named Catherine Vanoy. She's a consultant that the Harvest Foundation has hired to work on this issue, as well as some other issues that we're working on her with. A lot of Appalachian Regional Commission applications. Catherine is helping us with those. We're working on one to enhance the availability of natural gas to Commonwealth Crossing, which is really the one utility that we do not have in place, and she's helping us with that. And as Dale said, our coverage is kind of like a checkerboard. Mm-hmm. It's not linear. You've got good coverage here, but you may not have it right there. And it's hard to address that. We were hopeful that we could use some CARES money to do that, actually putting lines in the ground and getting it out. But with the constraints on the spending of that money, it has to be done by December the 30th.
Right.
There's no way you can outfit what we need to outfit by that deadline. We're doing our best. I was going to include this later, but I'll do it now. And Dale alluded to it. We're working with Mrs. Strayer and the school system to purchase these devices. We're going to cover it through CARES money through December the 30th, which is as far as we can go with it. And then hopefully on the back end of that, for a 12-month contract, the school system can figure out how to pay that carrying cost at that point. But we've had those conversations, and in fact, we signed off on it today that they could go ahead and purchase those things. I have no idea what the delivery time frame would be, because I think everybody's ordering the same thing.
Exactly.
Pretty much. But that is underway, and hopefully we can get those rolled out as soon as we can.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Dale, thank you for the background on that. And we'd be remiss if we didn't go a little deeper as to all this didn't get done overnight. And I'd like to also thank Mark Heath and his group in your efforts with Mid-Atlantic Broadband from day one. It's starting to pay off with where we really need it. Not only with the business recruitment, but we're seeing other opportunities unfold right before our eyes. Thank you, Mark. Other discussion while we're on this item. Thank you, Dr. Martin, for the questions and the background that you've given us. Any other discussion? Okay. With that, where does the board want to go from here today? Do you want to do something today, or it's the only way I know how to ask it?
Well, Mr. Chairman, I think that, you know, we've heard from both sides, you know, and we're in a situation right now, you know, where do we go from here? You know, we can vote to abstain for right now, or we can go ahead and vote to do it. I don't think if we even went to court that we would get anything better than what we got right now to offer. I hate losing the call center, local call center, and I expressed that to Mr. Dollar there, that I hate to lose the call center. But things happen, you know what, we've all lost things in the areas that we would have hoped we wouldn't have lost, but we've lost them. In my old saying is you got to adapt and overcome problems and issues that you run across to. Myself, I'm in the Collinsville district. My district itself is not affected as much as the suburb areas like Dr. Martin, Deborah's areas. But there again, you know, I echo their comments 100% what they're doing for their district. So I really do. But I myself personally, I would like to go ahead and make the motion that we approve the contract with Comcast and go from there.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion at this point? Any at all? All in favor? It's 6-0, Jennifer. And Mr. Doherty, I apologize that I didn't readily identify you up front.
Now, I have one comment, though.
Yes.
Will you take the initiative to get with Ms. Strayer, or is she going to get with you? One or the other?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, good.
And then you'll come back and tell us wonderful things about Wi-Fi expansion.
Possibly.
I think we're going to have a really nice conversation.
Body language will be appropriate. Yes, you're going to have wonderful things to say.
Okay, we'll move on to agenda item 13, informational items. We'll begin by taking comments from the board, beginning with Mr. Zaire.
No, sir.
Dr. Martin.
No, sir.
Mr. Bryant.
No, sir.
Ms. Buchanan.
No, sir.
Mr. Slaughter.
No, sir.
And I have none. Mr. Hall.
I have several items. I want to start with Sheriff Perry still here. Sheriff, you want to come forward and introduce someone who needs no introduction?
Yes. Just keeping the board aware in our office. For a number of years, you've been working with Lieutenant Steve Raines. He recently retired. And with that, his position has been filled with Brian Lawson, who's going to be promoted to the rank of lieutenant. He will oversee the cops, the position, local ordinance enforcement, and school resource officers. But I want to take the opportunity to introduce him to you. Brian's been with us probably over 13 years or so. Worked with the city police department prior to that, but with us, he's done everything asked, worked in investigation, serves on the SWAT team, dive team, and an excellent person. And just wanted you to see the face, but anything that you need, he will be glad to help with.
Did Sheriff Perry had to break your leg to take the position?
No, that was my wife.
Okay.
I have several other things. I'll try to go through these quickly. I want to update you on our CARES Act Small Business Grant Program. As you remember, we set aside $250,000 out of our CARES Act money to do a small business grant program. Through last Friday, we have received 64 applications. We've approved 51 of those 64. Several of them we're still working with because of incomplete applications or that sort of thing. We had about less than a handful that actually were city businesses that applied for ours. But of the 51 that have been approved so far, we've expended about $126,000 in small business grants. That's roughly half of what we've set aside. We did not put a deadline on it initially. What I would like to do with your concurrence is to put a deadline of August 31st on any kind of applications. We have seen a significant drop-off in applications over the last week or so, but we will continue to promote this through mid-August and hopefully spend the rest of the money appropriately to the folks who need it. We got about $4.4 million in overall CARES Act money. We spent or have allocated roughly about $2 million so far of that 4.4. Some of that is for infrastructure changes to this building, for instance, restroom accessibility, that sort of thing. A lot of money has been spent or targeted for technological advancements. We're going away from desktops in our offices and going to the laptops with the docking station, so that if we do have to telecommute significantly in the future, we just pop it out of the desk and we take it home and we've got everything that we need to have. So some significant money is going toward that. We are working, as I said earlier, with the school system on several items that will help their issues as they roll out the school year. We pretty much solidified all that today, but we will continue to update you on what we're doing there. The Mask Up MHC campaign, you've probably seen these. We have masks available in our building, both in English and in Spanish, that essentially says, please wear your mask, Mask Up MHC. And there are several videos available that the Harvest Foundation did with our former intern, Carly Foster. We did the Harvest Foundation, and we primed her, and now you're taking advantage of it. But those videos are out there, and we're looking at buying some media time for those as well. An update on the John Rose Smith project. We want to convert that into loft apartments. We had really two issues that the county had to address as this process goes forward. One was to get designation for the facility as a historic building, which would bring significant tax credits to the developer that winds up with it. Mr. Clark has led that effort for us. We have worked through the state level to get that designation, and now we're on to the federal level. The state level work went well. Federal level is more involved, so we're working on that, hopefully get that wrapped up. And we needed to get an asbestos report on the facility to see how much was there, what the mitigation costs would be. We're hopeful that we'll get that report this week. So once we get that, and once we get the designation, I think we can move forward with transferring that facility to a developer. And the developer who replied to the RFP has a plan for, I think it's 33 apartments within that facility, and as well as some new build on the ballpark behind John Redd. So I think it would be a great project for the Collinsville district and that Virginia Avenue corridor. We received a PUP grant from the Harvest Foundation for Census 2020 work. That PUP grant expires at the end of this month. The person that we hired to do that for us was Tanya Davis, and she's done a terrific job. Our online rate for going in by our citizens going in online and completing the census document is about 63% at this point, which is good, and right after where we were expecting that to be with this extra push. Having the COVID impact has hurt our efforts because you can't go door to door, but we're hopeful that the push online will continue, and then once there is some door-to-door availability within the community that we won't pay for, Census Bureau will do that. Hopefully that'll drive our response rate up even higher. And one more thing, the governor had his press conference today at 2 o'clock. He announced some rollback of requirements only for the Tidewater region, not for the rest of the state. But he did say if things trend poorly, that he will look at doing the same for other localities, for other regions. But in Tidewater, he's basically said restaurant hours will be reduced. Restaurants will have to stop selling alcohol at 10 o'clock. And crowd sizes will go from a maximum of 250 to 50. So he's essentially rolled back phase 3 to phase 2 for the Hampton Roads Tidewater region. And we'll keep you abreast of how our numbers and how the impact is for us. But that's all I have.
Okay. Any other items from board members while we're taking informational items or comments? With that, we'll move on to agenda item 14. If someone will cite the items that will allow us to go into closed meeting.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the board convene in closed meeting as permitted under the following sections of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act. 2.2 3711A1 for discussion of appointees to the Roanoke River Basin Association. 2.2 3711A7 for discussion of pending legal matters, 2.2 3711A3 for discussion of the acquisition, disposal of real estate, and 2.2 3711A5 for discussion of as yet unannounced industries.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor? It's 6-0. Jennifer, see everyone upstairs, 5 minutes.